everybody. Welcome to GameSpot.com. I am Peter Brown, joined today by Dan Edelman.
Hey, how's it going?
It's very good. I'm happy to see you. I'm happy Chasm is out today. We can finally talk about this game a little bit more. And you are really here to do most of the talking.
I guess so. Yeah. So thanks so much for inviting me. The launch of Chasm has been a long time coming. I know we've talked about it for years now.
Yes.
So that day is finally here. It's out on PS4, Vita, and Steam today.
Excellent. Is it cross-buy on PlayStation across?
Yep.
Cool.
PS4 and Vita. So if you've got both, there's no sense in not buying it.
Our review is up today. Old GameSpot veteran Tom McShay. I shouldn't say old. He's a very spry young man. He's got his review up on GameSpot, giving it 8 out of 10. And I've been enjoying the game myself from the little bit I've played. So let's hop into it, and Dan is going to walk us through some of the intro stuff, and then we will look into a couple hours into the game to see what that looks like. Alrighty, if I'll press the right button. There we go.
Cool. Yeah, so I thought I might, for people who have been following Chasm for a while, they might already be familiar with some of this stuff. So I thought I'd kind of highlight a different area that I don't think we've talked much about, which is about like the traversal of the world. So, but for those who are not familiar, I'm just going to start off. Here's the kind of the main hub world. And this game, I've already put maybe an hour or two into this gameplay. So normally when you first show up, it's a ghost town. There's nobody here. And so as you can see, I've already rescued this NPC here.
Okay.
And then there's another NPC that I found. So the more NPCs you rescue throughout the game, the more this town comes alive, and they'll offer you side quests and things like that.
One of the early things I love in the game, it was a little small touch, but I'm sure you're well aware, is when you're in the castle and it says, go find the commander, you find the guy who's like scrubbing the ground, right? And if you talk to him, the next time you pass by, he's on to his next chore.
Yeah.
And I just sort of, this game, at least as I always imagined, it was very gameplay exploration driven, but it seems like there are these nice little narrative touches that just sort of help inform the world and the context for what you're doing.
Yeah, that was really important to the team, was to make it feel like the town was alive,
yeah.
and that castle keep was alive. So like if you look at like in that outpost where you start off the game, there's like signs on the wall that'll say like, 2 of our cadets were caught gambling, and so that's why they're doing those chores.
Right.
They were put on KP duty or the equivalent. And so like there are all these like hints about things that have happened somewhere else in the world. So it feels like a lived-in world.
Excellent. Well, let's take a look at the mines. That's where we're going to go right now.
So this is the first area where you go in. As I said, this is an area that I've already explored a little bit. So, I haven't maxed out the map here, so you can see it, towards the bottom. There's some areas I haven't explored in the upper right and things like that. But, I've explored a bit. And by the way, there are no spoilers in this because everyone's map is going to be slightly different.
Right, because this is a procedurally generated game, but you can share the seed number, the sort of the key variable that determines how the algorithm spits everything out.
That's right, yeah. So in this case, my seed is in the lower right. So if anyone wants to, have that map available to them, they could just kind of screenshot that.
Yeah, and I've started a couple different games, so I've seen the randomization in effect, and it's not very drastic, but it is noticeable.
Yeah.
I definitely came across certain things where like this playthrough feels different. So I'm curious to see how that unravels as the game goes.
Yeah, and for people who first hear about like kind of randomization, procedural generation, they'll often think like roguelike or permadeath, and that's not the case. It basically creates an entire world map, and that's your world map for the entire campaign, which is going to be like 8 to 12 hours. So as I mentioned, there's I've explored a lot of the mines, and there are these hub rooms that you discovered. So I'm going to talk a little bit about traversal. So here, I'm going to go out here, and you'll see that now I'm in the upper left part of the map.
So one quick question.
Yes.
The idea of depth, right? Because we're looking at a 2D map here, but you just traveled in Z space, which we can't really see.
That's right.
So how is that handled by this map?
So behind the scenes, it's really just like a teleport. But in theory, like you can see these orange rooms, that's where those portals will take you out to. So if I go back in this portal room here, so you're right, in the game world, this is kind of Z space, and you're traveling. There's down a little bit, and so you can easily get to major areas of the map because the map gets pretty big after a while. And I know like backtracking is part of the fun, but also if there's no good traversal system, then it can be a little bit tedious as well.
Of course.
So, and then between worlds, there are these portals that you can unlock. And
Oh,
so,
wow. Okay, this is very different.
So now this is
The catacombs,
a
I
new
assume?
area. Yeah, exactly. So I just unlocked here. So I stopped my playthrough just as I got to the catacombs, and I wanted to unlock this portal. Oh, and somebody's saying we can't see the game.
Well,
So
I would have to
that's-
call my video tech in here. Oh, he says
Oh, we
can
can't see. Don't lie. All right,
You
nice.
got us, VM Sony.
So yeah. So anyway, here you can see that some of these are locked, so it's not like you instantly get access to the full map.
Right.
It's just as you uncover these different portals, you can go through it. So all right. So that's enough about traversal and giving some context. So now this is an area of the game that I'm trying to remember the last time we showed this publicly. It's been a while, so it's
I haven't
gonna be
even
pretty.
I haven't even seen that wall hanging mechanic before.
Yeah,
Like on
so
a
that's
ledge.
that's one of the abilities that you get a little bit later in the game.
And so the combat, and listen to me distracting you, of course, is according to our review that I believe it gets it gets a little bit difficult as the game goes on, and certainly in the early hours, I think like immediately it feels like you get settled into a very basic rhythm. But I ended up through a thing last night where it took me. It felt like it took me to an advanced area, like very briefly, and there were enemies that took like 10 hits to kill, like only about 15 minutes into the game, which is very surprising to me. But that gave me a taste of like maybe where combat goes later on. So like, I'm assuming yes, there was a focus to make combat very demanding and punishing, but you know, how does that scale from your perspective?
So yeah, there's James Petruzzi, the guy who is really the lead designer and director of the game. He really wanted to make sure that it was kind of a hardcore experience. So it's basically the way the gameplay works is that there are save points spread throughout the world, and that's primarily where you replenish your health. So right now, you know, I'm at 69 health, and I'm cheating a little bit. I'm playing in easy mode because it's always embarrassing to die when you're demoing a game. So normally I'd be playing on normal mode. Oh, here's an NPC, by the way. And they're
always pretty much in these like little small quarantined off areas, right?
Exactly. So you kind of have to explore a little bit and kind of make sure you're covering every nook and cranny. Otherwise, if you just keep going, you might miss a few of them.
I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but for people who maybe don't, understand maybe some of the inspirations behind this game, obviously very similar to Castlevania Symphony of the Night and all the other games that sort of branched off of that. You can call it Metroidvania if you like. I suppose that's become the term that people use.
So I often think of this game as being much more Vania than Metroid, and so I've as you know, I also worked on Axiom Verge with Tom Happ, and so I kind of think of like that's the Metroid of the two, and then this is the Vania of the two.
Right.
All right, so I can't get up there, so I will need another power up later. So I'm just going to come back to that later.
Yeah, Symphony of the Night in particular, there are a lot of little tiny touches. Even as you watch the character run around, like that slight blur behind him, Alucard had the same thing. The way that the vector of his jump, the main character here, it's basically the same pace, speed, and distance as Alucard, and he has the backdash as well.
That's right. But one thing that, for better or for worse, oops, I should be paying attention. For better or for worse, one of the things that a lot of people have been asking for is to do that speed backdash. If you've ever seen speedrunners playing,
oh yes, that is their thing. And I was trying to do some of that, and I was struggling.
Like every time I show the game off at PAX, like you can always tell. Oh wait, I was already here. Never mind. You can always tell who has played a lot of Symphony of the Night because like they'll instantly just try to like do that move where they're backdashing and canceling out of the animation so they can just like quick run across.
Yeah. Crime in the YouTube chat. We spoke about this at the top of the stream. This game is out today on PC and PlayStation platforms, where it is also available for cross-buy across Vita and PS4.
Yes, and we definitely want to bring it to all kinds of platforms. So kind of stay tuned for more announcements of that. We've got kind of like in the modern sense of game development, we've also got lots of ideas for updates we want to be doing. So this is definitely the kind of game that I think is going to grow over time. And so, yeah.
Interesting.
You buy it once and it will continue to expand.
Well, that's great. Yeah, we're sort of in this season of Metroidvanias. It feels like Chasm is one of a few coming out right now. And it's great to see so many of them actually be quite good. This one in particular. I'm very eager to play it some more. And I had not seen the Catacombs before, so I'm even more intrigued. Can you give me like maybe a broader understanding of the sorts of environments people will find?
Sure. So you start off in the mines. In fact, the story for people who aren't familiar with it is that you go into you're in the outpost where you're a soldier basically, and you're trying to, earn your stripes as a new recruit. And you are the commander calls you into his office and says, "All right, the mines which are important for our efforts are shut down for some reason. Like, we don't know what's going on, but the townspeople, the mines have shut down. So can you go investigate?" So you go out there, and when you get to the town, you find that all the people have disappeared, and so you start off in the mines just trying to figure out what's going on, and very quickly you meet a professor, kind of an anthropologist, I guess, who has been studying these mines and finding like cave drawings and all sorts of things like that about some ancient civilization. And perhaps that is tied to why all these supernatural creatures have suddenly come out of the woodwork and out of these mines here.
Is this the older guy that's asleep? You have to go wake him up with the bell early on to get the key for the mines?
That guy just stays asleep most of the game.
Yeah, he does. I was gonna say, do you have to go back and keep waking him up?
Yeah, pretty much. He was like, so like every time you find an NPC, you can go back there and be like, "Hey, found a new NPC," and he'll be like, "Oh, great, find the rest of them."
Your work is just beginning. What would you say is probably a reasonable, hour count that people can expect here, and for their first playthrough? Because I've heard that people are actually giving this more than one, given the randomization.
So I would say for completionists, where most of our Kickstarter backers who got early access to it, they were averaging about 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours.
Nice.
So some people who weren't really trying to focus on getting every little thing. Oh, this is a power-up that I'll need to slide under there. Those people were taking more like 8 hours, somewhere in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And in terms of the randomization, the other thing I'll just kind of mention is that a lot of people who have played the game just for the first time didn't even realize there was anything random about it. It was really much more once they started playing on their second run through, and maybe they were thinking of speeding through it, speed running through it, and then they realize it's all different. So
the randomization is piecing together pre-made things, correct? It's not like it's forming entire new rooms with every detail randomly.
Exactly. So for example, this room that I'm in right now with those moving buckets, that exact room might appear in another playthrough. It just might be in a different place.
Gotcha.
And same with this room. I may encounter that in a different playthrough. And I would say, roughly speaking, on any one playthrough, you'll probably encounter about 80% of the rooms.
Okay.
So if you play through it maybe 3 or 4 times, you'll definitely see all of the rooms in there. But if you only play it once, chances are there will be a handful of rooms that you never got to see.
We got Crime in the YouTube chat asking about difficulty settings. Is there a hard difficulty setting in this? I can't say that. I guess you said you were playing it on easy, so there must be.
Yeah.
So what is hard?
So
bring
there's
to the table?
easy, normal, and then there is hard, and then there's I'm trying to remember what we called it. There's like super hard and insane mode, and then I think if you beat the game on hard mode, then you can unlock permadeath.
Right. I was going to ask about that next.
Yeah. Why anyone would want to do permadeath, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think a lot of people, when they hear randomization, they think, oh, roguelike.
Of course.
And therefore permadeath, and that's not really kind of what we were going for.
Yeah.
It's much more a traditional Metroidvania.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if you're referring to this, but I know when I was looking online, there was some miscommunication from fans to other fans about what this game was. It seems like only recently people were realizing that no, this is not a roguelike. There is not permadeath.
So it's interesting. Like probably one of the best roguelikes in recent memory is Rogue Legacy, and one of our artists actually worked on Rogue Legacy. In fact, he was just kind of coming off of that project when he joined this one as well. And
Gotcha.
so like when James was first describing this game to him, he was, kind of saying, like, there's randomization, there's, it's this kind of pixel art style.
He was like,
I
deja
just
vu.
made that game, yeah. But it turned out it's obviously very different.
For anyone who's just joining us once again, this is Chasm. I'm joined by Dan Edelman. I am Peter Brown of GameSpot, and we are checking this out because the game is out today. And Dan is now currently in the depths of the first main area, the mines.
Yeah.
PC, PlayStation. How much does the game cost on the different platforms?
So it is $19.99 regular, but we're doing a 10% off thing this week. So now is a good time to buy it. I don't know when we'll put it on sale next. Probably not for a few months. So
sure.
By the way, I just got an
Right.
upgrade, so that's a good excuse for me to go into this screen here. So one of the things that differentiates a Vania from a Metroid game are these
RPG type
elements.
stuff, yeah.
So you can see on the left the stats that I have. You can also get new equipment and equip it. So I will accessorize, and so you can see it boosts my attack. Basically, there's no reason not to equip this.
Sure.
Some of the things that you'll find later in the game, there's trade-offs. It'll be like, well, your defense increases, but then your attack decreases.
Of course.
That kind of thing.
What's the extent that you can expect to look for gear? If I'm just going off of Symphony of the Night as a reference point, there was a surprising number of, whether it was weapons or shields or whatever that you could collect. Is it pretty extensive in this game?
I would say it's pretty sizable. And also one of the cool things about it is that, so here I just got a tonic recipe, and that kind of leads into this idea of the NPCs and how you work with them. So you can actually acquire magic items, and then you can upgrade them back at the town. Similarly, you can get new weapons, and then if you go into town, they'll forge new items for you, and you can also discover new items and just find them. But yeah, so as a combination of like what you would get from the NPCs versus what you would get from just hunting around on your own, you can actually get a good amount of gear. One of the things that I like to do is sell my old gear, the things that I'm clearly not going to be using again, and then I can use those proceeds to upgrade my other gear or buy new gear. One thing I actually haven't done, and maybe I should go back to town to do this, is I haven't gotten any of my magic gear. So normally, some of the magic items that you can equip are things like, basically it's a projectile type of thing where you can have like a boomerang or throwing knives or that kind of thing. So most of the combat, I think, is designed around this idea of melee combat, but there are some enemies that you're going to get close to, and you're going to take some damage. Like this guy who throws rocks, it just always winds up hitting me. So sometimes, like if there are some of those, I'll just use a magic item and just kind of pelt them from a distance, so I soften the ground a little bit.
Yeah. And here you got some like puzzle solving, I see. If you'd like to, you could push that cart over, presumably to get up to a higher platform.
Yep. So I already did that, so that's why I kind of skipped past it.
Yeah,
so there was actually a place over here, which I'll just kind of showcase.
I think this is actually the thing I was referring to, where it took me to a different. It's hard to explain because it felt like it took me to like a special like place. When I said but it took me to like an advanced area. And what was even more strange about it, which I haven't seen in the rest of my playthroughs, was I was in a room like this, and then I went through the portal and I came out, and it was the same room but more difficult. Yeah.
And
then I was able
trying
to
to picture what it is you're referring to.
I could actually load up my save and show you because it was very interesting to me.
All right.
I'm potentially off stream, so we don't bore our viewers, but yeah. And then I also noticed earlier you had picked up sort of like a temporary buff. Now, yesterday I got really lucky. I got a experience buff, and I got maybe it was a damage buff. But how many various buffs are there? And are there any like negative ones that you can maybe get if you're not careful?
So the buffs that are like little shrine things, those are always going to be positive. So the ones that you can get, it'll say something like, you feel protected. And so what that means is there's a buff for your defense. Sometimes it'll say, you feel open to learning. And that means that you get bonus XP when you defeat an enemy. Or it might say you feel lucky or you feel fortunate.
Oh, that's the one I had. Yeah, where I was getting lots of money.
Yeah,
everyone was dropping fat sacks.
Yeah, exactly. So those are always nice, like when you get those, and then you can go to town and you can do some shopping there.
And you can go to town, literally and figuratively.
Yes. And then there's also this one character called Jinx that's in the game, where there's kind of like this like wheel that you spin, and it's really a gamble because it's not all positive results. So you can spin the wheel and like you might get a buff of, a permanent buff of +2 on your attack or something like that, which would be great, or extra HP or something. But by the same token, you could actually get something like a reduction in 2 HP for your character, and like you can't undo that. Unless maybe I guess you could probably just quit your game and reload your save.
So sometimes when in games when they give you a character and the whole thing is you name it yourself, right? Like once in a while the game will suggest a name. This game does not, but I'm curious, is there an internal name for this main character?
Well, when we first started out, this character was always named Dalton. And I'm not sure why. We just kind of I should pay attention. We kind of moved off of that, so the name Dalton isn't referred to in the game anymore anywhere.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I always name it after myself.
Same. So my habit is we were talking off camera earlier about RPGs, and having played a lot of Final Fantasy, one of the characters that constantly recurs, which is weird because the games aren't related, but a character named Sid with a C. So it's always a different character. Sometimes they share certain traits, but so whenever I go into a game like this where it has a choose your own name, I always go with Sid.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Just to kind of play into that idea that like, it's a parallel universe version of this archetype. It doesn't always align, but I have fun with it.
So
either that or it's my cat's name.
This is where a boss battle had been fought.
Okay. Let's see. Jesse Late in the YouTube chat is talking about DLC or updates. Earlier, Dan had mentioned that is all part of the plan to keep expanding this game as time goes on. So I think you can look forward to stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got some new game modes that we've been kicking around for a while. We obviously want to finish the core gameplay experience, so we've done that. I think there are some new game modes that we'd like to do. Also, localization is a big deal that we really want to do next.
Right.
So right now the game is only in English, but we're gonna remedy that pretty quickly, and we want to make sure that it's available for people of all languages.
If you could shout out one language that is commonly neglected, but you guys are going to make it happen, is there anyone that comes to mind?
I don't know if it's neglected that much anymore, but I'd really like to do Russian because I've noticed, like on Steam, there have been a lot more Russian-speaking players.
Of Chasm in particular?
Well, not of Chasm in particular, just in general. And I think I probably noticed this trend the most with Axiom Verge. Like, we were just noticing so many players coming from Russia, and it hadn't even occurred to us to localize the game into Russian.
Understandable, yeah.
And I've also thought about China for this game, because that's obviously
the biggest market in the world, right?
Yeah. But the feedback that I've gotten is that in the Chinese market, people look at pixel art games and just assume that it's, an old game. So like the whole idea of like pixel art as a deliberate
as
aesthetic,
a modern means of expression.
yeah, is not. So
Interesting.
so
Okay.
we may not release in China. I'm not sure yet. But Chinese people, of course, would be able to buy it on Steam because Steam's worldwide.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one of those buff things that we talked about.
Right. How many? Is there a fixed number of boss battles throughout this game?
Yeah. So there are, and I don't recall. I'm not sure how many there are. I should know that number off the top of my head, but I don't. But yeah, there's a good number of boss battles, and then there are these mini bosses also spread throughout the world. And there's also this kind of interesting side challenge, which is totally optional, called the Arena, and you can fight a series of enemies in different waves. And if you prove yourself, then there's a kind of a boss battle at the end of that. There's actually two mini boss battles as part of that, and if you complete that challenge, you get a cool piece of gear. So that's something that
Nice.
I would encourage people to try. But it's I would also encourage people to save their game because it's actually a pretty challenging challenge.
That's the word going around. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I came across one of these, but it wasn't activated. What do you have to do to activate one? Is that like after you beat the main boss
For
this section?
this portal here?
Yeah, I got up to it and it didn't give me a prompt and it wasn't like shimmering like that.
Right. So I think it starts shimmering once you have more than one area. So once you get to the
okay.
catacombs,
Gotcha.
then this one will take you between the different worlds, and then on this side here, this will take you to to the different areas of the map on over here. So I'm trying to remember. It's been all of several hours since I last played this one, and goes to show that the map is random because I can't remember where, so I got this ledge grab ability, which I'll demonstrate here.
Yep.
That's the ledge grab, and that was required to get past a certain room. I'm trying to remember where that room was so I can go back there and kind of continue the quest.
Cool. Well, while you are looking around at that, I'm going to see if there are any questions in the Twitch chat and the YouTube chat. I hear Bigfoot Scrounger doesn't like me and is unsubscribed. Last chance I will unsubscribe. Oh, no, I think we lost you. I can't even find your question, unfortunately. But yeah, if you guys have any questions for me, I'm paying attention. And if I don't know, there's a really good chance that Dan does know. So have at it.
I know all.
You know all. One of us has to, right?
Yeah, so right now, just so everyone's aware, I'm just kind of wandering around the map aimlessly. I'm not like deliberately kind of seeking out my next destination. So, normally if I weren't having a conversation while playing,
of course,
I probably wouldn't be revisiting the same rooms over and over. So yeah, here's a power up I couldn't reach before. Ooh, a whip.
Oh, a whip indeed.
Gotta go with the whip.
So beyond your weaponry, does any of your gear is it visible once you're playing the game?
No, so it doesn't change. So you could like equip a helmet and gear and things like that, but it won't change what your outward appearance looks like.
Gotcha.
It's only your stats.
Yep.
Yeah. But I will say that the weapons are pretty different from the other gear that you get. So as an example, if I go into my equipment here and I've got this leather armor and leather belt, and maybe later on I'll upgrade that leather armor to steel armor, it doesn't really change the way I move. But the whip, the motion of the whip, if you notice how it works, feels very different from, say, the knife, which is much more short distance. So that.
Well, what advantage does the knife give you? Does it do a little bit more damage?
Yeah, and it's a lot faster.
Right, okay.
So you'll notice like how long it takes to kind of wind up and get that action going.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to relearn new timing. I really like the whip. The whip does a lot of good damage, and both on the way out there and on the way back.
Do your accessories at any point sort of influence the basic abilities of your character? Like, say, could I run a little bit faster or jump a little bit higher through just an accessory alone?
Not through an accessory, but through abilities.
Just ability upgrades, yeah.
So when you get those, and those, so, talking a little bit about the procedural generation, the randomization, the way those work is actually, is that those upgrades always appear in the same general place in the world. So there's always these things that you're kind of expecting to get, and you kind of need to progress through the game.
Yeah.
And so, like that ledge grab ability, which I already have, if I didn't have that, it would be really difficult to progress through the game. So that's always going to be in the same place. And then it's really just how you get from point A to point B that is different on any given playthrough. So it feels different. You still have to explore, but the core experience is roughly the same.
Yeah, and I would imagine ramping up the difficulty is a good way to also add to that changing of the experience after repeat playthroughs.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm very curious to see if like the speedrunning community identifies like a seed number they love, right? Like if this is the hard seed or this is the good seed. Like, do you think that they will vary in so much as people will find a particular seed that is like, ooh, this one is special?
Best. I'm not sure if any one will be any more special than the rest, but I think I can imagine the speedrunning community just kind of deciding on, all right, this is the one we're going to go with.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to, I think, yeah.
But I could, another thing that I'm kind of curious to see at something like Awesome Games Done Quick or something like that is just watching speedrunners try to get through a new map that they've never seen before.
Right.
And just, they could even have the same map together, but, they go in unprepared and they just have their skills as a speedrunner, but not their memorization of the map layout.
Yeah, because they would still have some familiarity based on the fact that it's like piecing together, common parts.
Yeah.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah. And I don't think that's been done in any other game.
I'm struggling to think of any examples. It's rare that, at least I think it's rare that you get a seed number to really provide a anchor for whatever run you generate. But
yeah,
I don't actually play a whole lot of procedurally generated games, so I'm sure people will correct me in the chat, and please do. I love to learn new things. Just be nice. Or don't. What do I care? So how many times or how many hours would you guess you've put into Chasm over the while that you've been repping it now?
Yeah. Well, I've been working with the team for about 4 years now. Actually, I think on my Steam library it says something like 150. I don't know how many hours of like different builds that I've played through the years. Okay, here's an area. Obviously, I'm going to need some kind of lantern.
That just gave me an interesting random thought. I would like to see a developer speedrun their own game at something like Awesome Games Done Quick. Or maybe not speedrun in the traditional sense of like trying to get a record, but really just showing off things that maybe other people don't know.
Well, it's funny. Tom Happ actually did that.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, I think he did a competition with this guy named G-Virus, who is an active speedrunner in the Axiom Verge speedrunning community. And G-Virus just totally destroyed.
Yeah, all
like
right.
I think I'm a better speedrunner than Tom Happ is at the game.
I remember when Axiom Verge first came out, Lark Anderson, former GameSpot employee, now over at Twitch, he was doing, I think it was like a few days after, he had the game for like a weekend, and he came back and he's like, Pete, I beat the game in an hour and a half, or something really short like that.
I remember that. I remember.
And we did a stream where he did it live, and like, I think he did it faster.
Yeah, and for a moment, I think it was like 2 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
And for a moment there, that was the world record.
It was, yeah.
That didn't last very long.
No.
But yeah.
No, but it was still impressive to see. Lark is a good man that I miss a lot. You're probably not watching, but hello, Lark. Maybe you are.
He's out there in spirit somewhere.
Goob, GameSpot, official fanboy, in the Twitch chat, of course, remembers Lark. Known as Lark, cocktail specialist Anderson. I guess that's true. He likes to make... His parties are often themed around a specific cocktail.
Yeah, so I remember, I think it was right around the time of the Axiom Verge launch that it was you and Danny O'Dwyer and Jeff Gersman, and I think Lark, if I remember correctly, or maybe that was a different broadcast where you guys were all talking about the game, and he was adding about like how he was new to speedrunning. Like that was the first time he'd ever tried speedrunning a game.
Yeah.
But he really enjoyed the experience of just trying to beat the game in a speedrun mode. So I haven't explored down here. Let me see what's
It's
down
certainly
here.
an interesting game with which to jump in, Axiom Verge.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of think of these two as sister titles. Like I said, like there's
Right.
Metroidvania, and like also for the longest time we would show Chasm and Axiom Verge together in the same booth at shows like PAX or different shows like that. And so
It makes perfect sense. They appeal to the same sort of sensibilities, right? I mean, as you said, they're both Metroidvanias, but one carries the weight of, half the influence more than the other.
right. Yeah, and so James Petruzzi and Tom Happ have gotten to know each other over the years, and they become friends, and I think their spouses have become friends, and they keep in touch. So yeah,
great.
and it's funny because like both of them were, in some ways jealous of the other one's design.
Oh,
so,
sure.
James was saying like, man, designing around melee combat has all these challenges, and Tom was like, oh, I know, because I originally wanted Axiom Verge to have more melee combat, but I decided that to do projectile based instead, and so it's just kind of so we were kind of joking around like, all right, so maybe Tom should make the sequel to Chasm, and then James should make the sequel to Axiom Verge or something like that.
It's funny when you were talking about potential expansions to this game. It just sort of brought to mind how you see a lot of indie developers sort of pitching in to help add new content for stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, I definitely was thinking like maybe some sci-fi Axiom Verge type looking stuff in here would be nice.
It would be cool. It doesn't really fit with the theme of the world.
Well,
like
no.
those worlds are very different.
It would have to be like a dream sequence, right?
Yeah,
that,
right.
the character wakes up from. I mean, let's be real. It would be silly.
Yeah.
But a boy can dream. Bigfoot keeps talking about Siphon Filter. Dan, you got any opinions on the Siphon Filter series?
I do not. I apologize.
Sorry, Bigfoot.
I should probably focus a little bit on where I'm going instead of just kind of randomly walking around. So when is this coming out? It came out today.
Yeah, it's available right now on
Yes.
PC and PlayStation Network. So if you like what you see, you don't have to wait.
Yeah.
You can go for it.
Which, it's amazing. We've been talking about this game for literally for about 5 or 6 years now. We've
Yep.
got some fans who heard about it way back when James was talking about it on TIG Source, when it was like really just talking with other developers. And some of those people are like, oh my God, this game has been taking forever. And then for other people, they were saying like, oh, I just found out about this game last week. So for them, the wait hasn't been very long at all.
Right.
So it's kind of nice that different people have different experiences. So I'm actually going to wrap around. So
I appreciate this track, and the soundtrack in general I like, but there's something about this track which sounds, you can hear sort of the fact that it's a human playing an acoustic guitar. There's some artifacts of fingers hitting other strings at times. It's a nice little touch for this like sleepy, desolate kind of place.
yeah, it's definitely kind of reminiscent of like you're in the frontier. It's almost like Western.
Absolutely,
like,
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a covered wagon here, so
Yeah, exactly.
let's be real.
With apparently a flame inside, so I'm not sure how safe that is.
Hey, you live and you learn. Science takes a while. So okay, yeah. What are you doing now?
So this is one of the NPCs that I've rescued, and so now I'm gonna get a magic weapon. So I can't enhance them yet because I need the Book of Incantations. So that's one thing that I'm gonna have to remember as I explore to try to look for and get. or more to the point, once I get it, I'll have to remember come back and
right.
do this. So let's see. I'm gonna buy
okay, it's a pretty good looking stuff.
Yeah. So there's the magic knife. Like I said, that's gonna throw like a direct knife. The shuriken will kind of go out more at an angle, similar with the axe. Magic Molotov, you just throw that and it has like an AoE kind of thing where it'll just like spread fire on the ground a little bit. And then there's a boomerang. Let's see.
I might be crazy here. Yes. Seeing that turban up top, was there ever a point when the character wore that in like a cinematic, like over the years when the game's been marketed? Because that looks really dang familiar.
I don't think so.
Okay, well forget it. I'm losing my mind. That's fine.
Yeah, Great. I don't recall. I mean, we've been working on it for so long. Like there might have been like some mock-up that we put out there. It's
probably just me losing my mind.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. So I'm gonna get, let's see, the magic shield. I always like the magic shield, so I'm gonna purchase that, and then we got to go with magic knife because that's like pretty fundamental. So here, this is the magic shield.
Excellent.
And
cool.
And there's the magic knife.
Great.
And here, there's.
Okay, so I'm assuming more NPCs will end up here.
Yep.
As you save them.
So I can buy potions from this person.
Oh, Bob Jones in the chat is saying at one point he had a scarf around his neck in one of the openings. I'm going to get to the bottom of this after the stream.
I'm going to have to
I'm going to dig in.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, I was cleaning out my apartment as I'm wont to do often because it's never clean. And I found some stuff I'd gotten from PAX East probably 4 years ago, like a couple pins and some postcards and stuff. And it just reminded me, like, definitely I've been looking forward to this for some time. And it's great to see Chasm finally out. I'm glad.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see it here. It's been getting pretty good reception too, right?
Yeah, the fans have been, off the chart excited and very positive about it. I think there was a lot of fear that, since we started on a Kickstarter and we said at the time it'll take about a year to finish the game. And of course, famous last words. And so a lot of people are like, is this ever coming out? And when they saw, like, especially for people who tried the free demo that we put out there when we first launched the Kickstarter versus now, they're like, oh, okay, this is why it took 6 years.
Right.
And they're glad that we took the time to do it right.
Always.
Yeah.
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 What's that Miyamoto quote about a rushed game is always bad, but a delayed game is always good, or something
or
like that?
Eventually will eventually come out, but
right.
A bad game is bad forever.
Right.
Of course,
there
now there are updates. So I don't want to dig on like No Man's Sky.
I was gonna say perfect example of
of a game that like.
Sorry, Miyamoto.
So yeah, that's a little bit obsolete advice now, but no, I agree with that in principle. So let's see, where should I go next? So yeah, I'm just kind of wandering around.
Yeah, we've got about 15 minutes left on the stream here. Just give folks a chance to get some final questions in if you have them. Yeah, Chasm, it's here. It's a Metroidvania, and it's going to look a little different every time you play it. And it looks great in motion too.
Thank you.
Any plans for a physical soundtrack release?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Like, so we were talking about the soundtrack and that kind of country western kind of vibe in the town. So the soundtrack, I should point out. Oh, this is that room I was looking for because now I've got a ledge grab.
I remember this room, and I remember thinking, what am I going to do?
Yeah, and then just this guy.
That's it.
So the soundtrack was made by a guy named Jimmy Stevulak, who is actually a college friend of James Petruzzi, and also the lead programmer is a high school friend of James's. So it's basically all of James's childhood friends,
right,
or maybe young adulthood friends, getting together and making a game. Let's see.
Cool.
So he was saying that he really wants to put the soundtrack out on vinyl.
Yeah.
So that's on my to-do list now that the
Yes.
game is out. I want to find some people who make vinyl records and get that out there.
Luckily, it seems like that's easier to do than maybe ever for a small publisher. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we did that actually for Axiom Verge, just thinking, some guy approached us and said we'd like to do it, and I was like, all right, well, who would want a vinyl version of a digitally created soundtrack?
That's the magic, is preserving digital and analog, and in a mostly inert medium.
Yeah.
So
But
that I just love that weird romanticized idea of it.
I do too. But the interesting thing is like, so we did a fairly small run of those vinyl albums, thinking not that many people want them. And if you look on eBay today, they're going for like several $100s.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, because I didn't pick it up.
I've got like 8 in my bookshelf at home, so
I will give you several $100s.
That's my retirement plan.
Yeah, it's almost been hard to keep up with the number of releases on vinyl that I'm interested in. There's a company out of the UK that does a lot of stuff with Konami's old 80s arcade soundtracks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're doing a Gradius 1 through 3 release, and they're going to be including the arcade and the MSX soundtracks.
Oh, nice.
And the covers of the 3 are meant to align with each other, so you can eventually just display this awesome...
Oh, so you got to collect them all then.
You got to collect them all. That's how they get you.
Yeah.
That's how they get you.
Yeah, I've been thinking, because I'm a bit of an audiophile in my spare time, with mostly more home theater and video file stuff, and like, so that's kind of the other area of my of things I like to do. But I don't have a turntable, and I'm not I keep wondering whether I should get one, and the vinyl enthusiasts are always saying, oh yeah, you got to get one of those. But I'm still on the fence. So.
You're talking to a guy who, in his spare time, hunts down and collects CRT televisions. But I'm also my own worst enemy, because I invest in like hobbyist analog video upscaling equipment that is like, it takes years to come out. It's always very expensive and hard to get, and I'm I think I said this on Twitter the other day. I'm like running in 2 opposite directions at once. It's I think no matter what you can do, if you're happy with it and you're enjoying yourself, go for it.
Well, since you mentioned CRT.
Oh yes, the filter here.
Yeah. And
because I am such a nerd, the way I was describing this CRT effect, if you notice, like, yes, there are scanlines and such, but it seems to be almost emulating, I'm gonna get real stupid here, the aperture grill, rather than the shadow mask CRT effect, which was more prevalent on Trinitron TVs. Whereas each individual pixel would have an individual red, green, and blue luminance that it could apply on a per pixel basis. And so what you would notice is, yes, you have the horizontal breaking up with the scan lines, but in certain areas you might even notice a mild gridding effect. Very, very mild.
Interesting.
And maybe it was just the monitor I was playing on last night. I'm sorry. I don't know why I do this.
Well, yeah, I mean, because like on the old TVs, I remember like if you would get really close up to the TV, you could see each one. You could see the red, green, and blue.
Right. But that would only be on a Trinitron.
Oh, okay. Maybe I must have had a Trinitron then, because I'm back here again.
It was interesting. Sony licensed the technology out after a while, but for about 30 years, they were the only ones who could make an aperture grill. I think they actually just let it lapse, because that was by the time CRTs were running out. So you can find TVs from other manufacturers that have Tron in the model name, and that's their coy way of saying we do that too. The real way to tell, though, is the curvature of the screen. A Trinitron only curves left to right. It does not curve top to bottom.
Oh, interesting.
So it is a barrel shape. So if you ever see a TV with a barrel shape that's not a Sony, you can tell your friends, hey, this is a Trinitron. Aren't I cool?
Yeah.
With my cool factoid friend, and try to catch them as they run away because you're not cool.
I'm so glad I'm married, because if I were dating and still using that as my my
Luckily,
lines.
me and my girlfriend are very close. Bob Jones is right. I do love my old TV talk. All right, we're gonna call it a day. I think we've covered a lot of ground here about Chasm. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you.
You can find him on Twitter at Dan_Edelman. I am on Twitter at PC Brown, of course. GameSpot is streaming every day if we can, 11:30 and 2 p.m. So join us again at 2 o'clock today. Thank you for watching. Thanks for putting up your questions and putting up with me. Have a wonderful day.